For the first time, cartel kingpin El Mencho tonight is a $15 million man. That is the U.S. government reward just increased and placed on the head of Ruben Aseguera Cervantes, alias El Mencho.
He's a very powerful trafficker in Mexico, and he has cells all over the world.
2010, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, better yet known as El Mencho, becomes the leader of the deadly CJNG cartel after an internal battle in the Milenio cartel. Unknown to anyone, this would be the beginning of a terrifying reign that would make him a drug lord most wanted by the FBI. These are the most wanted drug lords that terrify even the FBI.
Ryan Wedding was an elite athlete and one of the few representing Canada in the Winter Olympics. You fast forward to today, now Ryan Wedding is on the FBI's 10 most wanted list.
American investigators say Ryan Wedding has escaped justice for far too long, and now they are offering a $10 million reward to secure his capture.
February 2002, Ryan Wedding represented Canada for the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. Now, who could have known that this Olympian would soon become a feared drug lord wanted by the FBI? Born back on September 14th, 1981, in Thunder Bay, Canada, Ryan James Wedding grows up in a family with deep ties to winter sports. Now, he learns to snowboard at Mount Baldy, a ski resort owned by his grandparents, and quickly would show promise. By age 12, he'd already begun competing, eventually winning a bronze medal at the 1999 Junior World Championships and a silver in 2001. His skills also earned him a top spot on Team Canada for the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, Utah, where he competed in the men's parallel giant slalom and placed 24th. Now, he didn't win a medal at the Olympics, and that event would mark the peak of his snowboarding career. So following the Olympics, Wedding enrolls at Simon Fraser University. However, his path soon takes a drastic turn when he left school and began dealing marijuana. And as time went on, Wedding expanded his operation, forming ties with Iranian and Russian cocaine traffickers. Then in 2006, his name appeared in a search warrant linked to a marijuana growing operation, though no charges were actually filed at the time. That situation escalated in 2008 when he attempted to purchase cocaine from an undercover U.S. government agent. Now, Wedding was arrested, convicted in 2010, and sentenced to 4 years in prison. However, that conviction was just a key moment in his descent into organized crime. And after serving his prison sentence, Wedding's operation would grow significantly more sophisticated and dangerous. October 17, 2024. The U.S. DOJ charges him with leading a multi-billion-dollar transnational criminal organization involved in cocaine trafficking and murder. According to federal indictments, Wedding allegedly directed a network that smuggled hundreds of kilos of cocaine from Colombia through Mexico and Southern California and into Canada and the United States. The scale and coordination of this elevated his status within the criminal underworld, and he became known by several aliases, including El Jefe, Giant, and Public Enemy. Wedding's alleged crimes went beyond drug trafficking, as prosecutors claimed he orchestrated multiple murders tied to his criminal enterprise. November 20th, 2023, 2 Canadian citizens, Jactar Sadu and his wife, Arbajan Sadu, were both killed in Ontario in retaliation for a missing drug shipment. A third member of the Sadu family survived the attack but sustained severe injuries. On May 18th, 2024, another guy, Mohammed Zafar, was murdered in a separate incident reportedly linked to drug debts. Authorities believe Wedding was behind the killings with help from Andrew Clark, a Canadian partner and alleged second-in-command of the trafficking ring. Now, Clark was later charged in the April 2024 killing of Randy Fader in Ontario. The murders formed part of a bigger strategy to eliminate threats and enforce control within the organization. June 2024, a federal grand jury in Los Angeles indicts Wedding and Clark on charges, including operating a continuing criminal enterprise, murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to distribute and export cocaine. The indictment details how the organization transported cocaine from Mexico into stash houses in Los Angeles before moving it into Canada via semi-trucks operated by couriers. 2 other Canadians, Hardeep Rate and Gurpreet Singh, allegedly oversaw the Canadian side of the transportation network. Now, these developments led to Wedding being named as the leader of one of the most dangerous drug trafficking organizations currently under investigation. March 6th, 2025, the FBI adds Ryan Wedding to the 10 most most wanted fugitives list, replacing Alexis Flores. Now, during a press conference in LA, Ackle Davis, assistant director in charge of the FBI's Los Angeles field office, would speak about the threat Wedding posed to public safety. His addition to the list would mark the 535th placement since the list was created in 1950. Davis described Wedding as this guy transitioning from Olympic snowboarding events to leading a global cocaine trafficking network and ordering targeted killings to maintain power. To aid in the manhunt, the FBI announced a reward of up to $50,000 for information leading to his capture. This was followed by a much larger reward from the U.S. Department of State. Under the Narcotics Rewards Program, Secretary of State Marco Rubio authorized a $10 million bounty for information leading to Wedding's arrest or conviction. Now, this unprecedented amount shows the seriousness of the charges and the scale of his alleged criminal enterprise. Although Wedding is currently believed to be hiding in Mexico, authorities haven't ruled out his presence in other countries, including the U.S., Canada, Colombia, Honduras, Guatemala, or Costa Rica. Law enforcement officials have also urged the public to contact the FBI via encrypted messaging apps or through official FBI channels if they have any information about Wedding's whereabouts. His face and details are being distributed widely across FBI platforms and on digital billboards in high-traffic areas. If convicted, Wedding faces life in prison for leading a continuing criminal enterprise. The two charges of murder and attempted murder each carry minimum penalties of 20 years, while the drug trafficking offenses carry minimum sentences of 10 to 15 years. This guy was an Olympian athlete, but now Ryan Wedding stands accused of leading one of the most violent drug trafficking organizations operating today. The FBI, in collaboration with the U.S., Canada, and Mexican law enforcement, continues its investigation and urges global cooperation to bring him to justice. Rene Arzate Garcia, known by aliases including La Rana, was born and raised in Mexico alongside his brother, Alfonso Arzate Garcia. Now, little is known about their early life, but both brothers would eventually rise to become high-ranking figures within the powerful Sinaloa cartel. Prior to their criminal ascent, though, the Arzate Garcia brothers were not widely known outside of their communities, and after they get involved with organized crime, their names become feared throughout northern Mexico and the U.S. Their path into crime would take them to places like Tijuana, a strategic corridor for smuggling, which ended up becoming their stronghold. Brothers gradually established control over trafficking routes and operational cells, earning a reputation for violence and loyalty to the Sinaloa cartel. Their allegiance was to the faction led by Ismael El Mayo Zambada, one of the original leaders of the cartel. Now, reports later said that Rene and Alfonso were not only trusted operatives, but also godchildren of Zambada, which solidified their position within the inner circle. Now, the brothers operated as plaza bosses in Tijuana and surrounding areas, overseeing the transport of large quantities of narcotics, which included fentanyl and marijuana, right into the U.S. Rene allegedly coordinated enforcement actions like kidnappings and executions to maintain cartel control and discipline. The violence surrounding their operations contributed to the rise in homicides in Baja California, where turf wars between Sinaloa factions and rival groups, which included the CJ and G, intensified. Rene Garcia's notoriety not only grew from drug trafficking, but from his role within the internal cartel conflict. In late 2023, during escalating violence between the Sinaloa factions, known as La Mayiza and Los Chapitos, the Arzate Garcia brothers officially pledged allegiance to La Mayiza, further aligning themselves with Zambada. The alliance was confirmed during a violent military confrontation in Sinaloa, where cartel enforcer Edwin Antonio Rubio Lopez, known as El Max, was captured. This would solidify the brothers' commitment to their godfather's faction. Now, the brothers are now known for managing one of the 3 fentanyl smuggling corridors controlled by La Mayiza. These routes span from Tijuana through other key regions like Nogales and Mexicali. Intelligence from Mexico's National Center of Intelligence confirms that the Arzate brothers' route is primarily a channel for fentanyl entering the U.S. The port city of Manzanillo, which is crucial for receiving chemicals from Asia, plays a central role in the logistics of these trafficking operations. July 25, 2014, a federal arrest warrant was issued for Rene Arzate Garcia by the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of California. Now, he was charged with conspiracy to import marijuana into the U.S. It was said he was involved with drug shipments across the U.S.-Mexican border, where the operations would pose a direct threat to American communities. Now, his brother Alfonso was also indicted separately for similar drug trafficking offenses on the same day. Rene Garcia has been a wanted fugitive with a reward of up to $20,000 for information leading to his arrest. Now, he's currently believed to be hiding in Mexico, and he remains under federal indictment in San Diego, also being designated as a major trafficker of illicit drugs, including fentanyl, which has linked thousands of ODs across the U.S. each year. In 2023, the U.S. Treasury Department escalated the pressure on the Garcia brothers by sanctioning them under the Executive Order 14059. Now, these sanctions are targeting individuals contributing to the international spread of illicit drugs. All property and interests owned by Rene Arasate Garcia in the U.S. are now blocked. The sanctions also prohibit U.S. citizens and companies from engaging in transactions with him or entities he controls. So despite being fugitives for more than a decade, Rene and his brother have both managed to elude capture while continuing to orchestrate cartel activity. The Department of Treasury emphasizes that they are key players in the international drug trade and are directly responsible for the ongoing influx of fentanyl into the U.S. As of 2025, the U.S. government continues to monitor their movements closely, coordinating with Mexican intel and law enforcement agencies, despite efforts involving multiple federal and local agencies, though, which include the DEA, FBI, and OFAC. Rene Arasate Garcia remains at large.
Now, with El Chapo doing life here at the Supermax prison in Colorado, they are in charge and in demand by American authorities. Jesus, known as Alfred Dio, is believed to be at the top of the heap.
June 21st, 2012, Jesus Alfredo Guzman was arrested for controlling most of the Sinaloa cartel's illegal drug trade between Mexico and the U.S. Now, shockingly, he was released and went on to become more dangerous than ever. Born 17th of May, 1986 in Zapopan, Mexico, Jesus Alfredo Guzman Salazar was born into a life of power and danger. The once feared leader of the Sinaloa cartel, Jesus grew up surrounded by the operations of one of the world's most powerful trafficking organizations. Now, along with his brothers, Ivan Archivaldo Guzman Salazar, Joaquin Guzman Lopez, and Ovidio Guzman Lopez, he became one of the Chapitos, the heirs to a criminal empire rooted in Sinaloa, Mexico. Early exposure to the cartel's inner workings came not through chance, but through direct grooming by El Chapo himself and his associate Ismael El Mayo Zambada, who would teach him logistics and the secrecy required to run an illicit drug network. By the mid-2010s, as their father's legal battles were growing, ultimately leading to his extradition to the U.S. in January 2017, the Chapitos began assuming greater leadership roles within the Sinaloa cartel. Jesus, in particular, steps in on the operational side, managing the movement of massive drug shipments, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana, right across into the U.S. He becomes deeply involved in the emerging fentanyl trade, importing precursor chemicals from China and producing the synthetic opioid for sale in U.S. cities. In the years following El Chapo's extradition, tensions would flare within the Sinaloa cartel. The Chapitos clashed with El Mayo's loyalists and their own uncle, Arellano El Guano Guzman, over control of routes and operations. Now, these power struggles led to a lot of violent incidents, which included a deadly shootout outside Culiacan in June 2020, leaving 16 people dead. The Chapitos also reportedly orchestrated the killing of Jose Rodrigo Arechega Gamboa, better yet known as El Chino Antrax, a close ally of El Mayo, after he escaped probation in the U.S. Back on October 17, 2019, in the Battle of Culiacan, Mexican forces arrested Jesus Alfredo's half-brother Ovidio. In response, hundreds of cartel gunmen loyal to Chapitos fled the city, blocked roads, set fires, and clashed with security forces. Chaos forced the Mexican government to release Ovidio to avoid further bloodshed, and that episode showcased the immense power Jesus Alfredo and his brothers wielded and their ability to mobilize forces rapidly to protect their own. Fast forward to April 6, 2023. This marks a significant step in U.S. efforts to bring Jesus to justice. A federal arrest warrant is issued for Jesus Alfredo in the Northern District of Illinois, charging him with conspiracy to distribute a controlled substance, running a continuing criminal enterprise, and money laundering. That same week, two separate grand juries in Illinois and New York returned indictments against him and his brothers. Charges included fentanyl importation, drug trafficking, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and further money laundering violations. But interestingly, he was arrested by Mexican Marines in June 2012, but was released under unknown circumstances. The scale of Jesus Alfredo's operations is immense. U.S. authorities linked the Sinaloa cartel under his leadership to the massive influx of fentanyl coming into the country. The Chapitos network would span across borders and continents. They've been accused of exploiting drug rehab centers to recruit traffickers and use international channels to expand their drug empire, even tapping into their Australian market. Now, to protect their enterprise, Jesus Alfredo and his allies don't shy away from violence. Ports have bribes, threats, murders, kidnappings, and assaults against their enemies, law enforcement, and even members of their own organization. In one extreme case back in 2023, the Chapitos allegedly enforced a self-imposed fentanyl ban following Ovidio's arrest. Over 50 people were tortured and killed in Sinaloa for violating the new rule, with fentanyl pills left on their body as a warning. Cartel enforcers claim that anyone who disobeyed must be executed. On April 14, 2023, the U.S. Department of State announces a reward of up to $10 million for information leading to the arrest and conviction of Jesus Alfredo Guzman Salazar. That's part of a broad effort to target transnational criminal networks behind this fentanyl trafficking. The State Department urged anyone with knowledge of his whereabouts to contact the DEA or visit a U.S. embassy. Despite growing international pressure, Jesus Alfredo remains a fugitive. Now, he is believed to be heavily armed and very dangerous. The Chapitos still control urban areas in Sinaloa, particularly in Culiacan, although El Mayo's factions also hold influence in surrounding rural regions. With Ovidio now extradited and Joaquin recently arrested for allegedly betraying El Mayo, cartel's internal alliances are fracturing, and U.S. officials are now worried these tensions may lead to more violence unless Jesus Alfredo is arrested.
Sean Binder was not just any businessman. On the surface, he ran a trucking company in Canada, but beneath that legitimate front, he was actually one of the biggest drug smugglers in North America.
2014, Shanaz Singh joins his father in Ontario, Canada, in the family's transportation business. Now, Singh took this opportunity to establish his own notorious syndicate of drug traffickers. 1999, Shanaz Singh was just 6 years old when his parents, Harbhajan Singh and Gurpreet Kaur, left their village in Mandiala in Punjab for Canada. He, however, remained in India under the care of relatives, studying at S.L. Bawa DAV College before graduating from Baring College in Batala. Now, like many from his village, Singh would grow up admiring success stories of Punjabi immigrants abroad and longed to reunite with his parents. That wish would come true in 2014 when he moved to Brampton, Ontario, and joined his father's transport business. Now, initially, Singh, known by alias Sean Binder, intended to help grow the legitimate trucking company, but over time he would become entangled in some illicit opportunities that came his way. The lax border security between the US and Canada created the perfect condition for smuggling. So as a result, trucks, disguised as carriers of regular goods, became key transporters for Colombian cocaine entering North America, with drug smuggling by land accounting for the majority of narcotics entering the US. Singh saw an opening to build something far more profitable than freight logistics. Not long after, the Singh family business expands rapidly, eventually overseeing up to 450 trucks running shipments weekly between Colombia and Toronto, with stops in the U.S. states in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and New York. The operation was massive. In fact, according to the FBI, Singh's syndicate was moving up to 600 kilos of cocaine per week. The criminal network generated around $600,000 weekly, which was a huge amount. That's far more than India's yearly seizures. October 2023, the FBI starts watching Singh's operations a little closer. The syndicate relied heavily on trusted enforcers such as Amrit Singh, Chima Singh, and Gurlal Singh. These men distribute cocaine across U.S. states and operate out of hidden stash houses, sometimes even vacant homes out of Indiana. However, the empire begins to crumble in April 2024 when Gurlal Singh, along with some of his buddies, Romy, Sabi, and Franco, steal a significant consignment of about 500 kilos of cocaine. Well, that betrayal set off alarms within Singh's inner circle. He and his enforcers quickly moved to recover the drugs. The group planned to confront the defectors in New York, even posing with weapons and the stolen cocaine just before arriving. However, that move backfired. February 26, 2025, the FBI arrested 6 of Singh's associates and seized 391 kilos of methamphetamine, 109 kilos of cocaine, and 4 firearms from various stash locations. But just before the FBI could find him, Singh vanished on March 2, 2025. He secretly secretly fled to India, hiding in Ludhiana, Punjab, while posing as a regular visitor under the protection of family ties. His disappearance scared U.S. authorities, and the FBI got to work, especially after confirming that Singh's father was already in a U.S. prison for similar crimes. The fear within other law enforcement circles was also real, as Singh's ability to move vast quantities of narcotics and his connection to armed operatives really made him one of the most dangerous drug lords on their radar. Meanwhile, back in Punjab, intel agencies have been tracking the rise of foreign-linked crime networks when 5 shooters connected to Canadian drug lord Amritpal Bhatt were arrested in December 2024. Singh's name appeared in the case file. March 10, 2025. Singh's intercepted by the Punjab police on his way to Chandigarh while carrying an unlicensed firearm. This arrest came through a targeted operation led by counterintelligence officers, ending his run from the law. The FBI's interest in Singh's capture was immediate. With him finally in custody, U.S. agencies began pushing for extradition. Singh's network had not only trafficked narcotics but also financed violent crime, including targeting killings in Punjab. His arrest became a potential bargaining chip in diplomatic negotiations between India, the U.S., and Canada, specifically on the issue of fugitive criminals hiding overseas. According to Indian officials, Singh's arrest could help dismantle similar networks and strengthen cooperation in global counter-narcotics efforts. However, for now, we don't know if Singh's going to be extradited to the U.S. for his crimes. 2005, Ivan Guzman Salazar was arrested in Palma on charges of money laundering. Although he was released after a successful appeal, Salazar didn't take this as a sign to stop his life of crime, as he went on to become the successor of his father, El Chapo. Ivan Archibaldo Guzman Salazar was born on August 15, 1983 in Zapopan, Jalisco, Mexico. He is the son of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman and Alejandrina Salazar Hernandez, and as a child, Ivan would grow up surrounded by drug traffickers and criminal operations that were tied very closely to his father's expanding cartel empire. Just like his brother, Jesus Alfredo, Ivan's early years would be marked by the presence of family members already involved in organized crime, including ties to Hector Luis Palma Salazar, a longtime associate of El Chapo. This environment would prove to be a foundation for his own criminal career. By the time he's a teenager, Ivan's already been introduced to the operations by his father and co-leader, Ismael El Mayo Zambada Garcia. Now with his brothers Jesus, Ovidio, and Joaquin, they become known as Los Chapitos. They're trained and groomed to take over leadership roles. Ivan's rise within the organization accelerated, with a great reputation for handling logistics, smuggling operations, and enforcing discipline through violence. In April 2004, Ivan was allegedly involved in murdering Canadian student Kristen Dayel and her Mexican friend Cesar Pulido in Guadalajara. Though the charges were never confirmed, it drew significant media attention. In February of 2005, Zapopan police officers arrested Ivan after observing suspicious activity connected to a man being thrown from a car. He was, however, released on bail a few months later, only to be rearrested again by federal agents. That same year, he's again imprisoned at La Palma on charges of money laundering. In 2008, he's found guilty, but again successfully appeals and was released. 2012, the U.S. Department of Treasury listed Ivan Archibaldo under the Kingpin Act, naming him as a key lieutenant in the Sinaloa cartel. The designation froze his U.S. assets and would prohibit American citizens from conducting business with him. On July 25, 2014, grand jury in the Southern District of California unsealed an indictment against him and issued a warrant for his arrest. He was charged with conspiracy to distribute and import large quantities of narcotics. August 15, 2016, Ivan and his brother Jesus Alfredo were kidnapped in broad daylight by members of the rival Jalisco New Generation cartel while dining at a restaurant in Puerto Vallarta. That was a power move by their enemies, but within a week, both brothers are released unharmed, signaling the power and reach of the Sinaloa cartel. In addition to that, during the infamous Battle of Culiacan, U.S. officials later confirmed Ivan playing a key role in organizing and executing the armed response. Following the 2019 conviction of El Chapo to the U.S., Ivan and his brothers quickly filled that power vacuum. According to U.S. authorities, they expanded by using sophisticated fentanyl laboratories, better air and sea transportation, longer smuggling smuggling tunnels and corrupting border officials. Their operation smuggled vast quantities of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and fentanyl right through the U.S. border, spreading throughout the entire country. Violence would accompany their control, with armed sicarios employed to secure drug routes and eliminate rivals. April 4th, 2023, a grand jury in the Southern District of New York returns an indictment against Ivan Archivaldo for leading a criminal enterprise responsible for smuggling fentanyl, coordinating its importation from China, and laundering drug proceeds. A day later, a superseding indictment was issued in the Northern District of Illinois. Charges included continuing criminal enterprise, fentanyl importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and money laundering conspiracy. Ivan Archivaldo remains a fugitive, and U.S. authorities have labeled him armed and dangerous. The U.S. Department of State has offered $10 million for information leading to his arrest and conviction. This makes him one of the most wanted drug lords in the world. There were many reports saying that he was captured back in August 2024 on the outskirts of Culiacan, but those turned out to be false. February 21st, 2025, Ivan avoided being captured again during the Joint Army and Police raid in Culiacan. According to reports, the drug lord escapes from his house in Tierra Blanca through a tunnel, just like his father. Mexican Army and National Guard with their choppers would continue circling the area for hours following the raid, but Ivan was never found. News outlets would confirm that Ivan Archivaldo remained at large, continuing to direct cartel operations.
P&L Mencho tonight is a $15 million man. That is the U.S. government reward just increased and placed on the head of Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, alias El Mencho.
He's a very powerful trafficker in Mexico, and he has cells all over the world.
In 1995, El Mencho was deported to Mexico after committing several crimes in the United States. Now, he joined the police force as a show of changing his ways, but little did anyone know that he'd soon become the leader of the most powerful cartel, wanted by the FBI. Born July 17, 1966, Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, better known by his alias El Mencho, grows up in a rural village, Culotitlan, located in Aguililla, Michoacan, Mexico. He's raised in poverty, working out of avocado fields alongside his 5 brothers. He had to drop out of primary school in the 5th grade and started guarding marijuana plantations by the age of 14 to get some kind of money. Seeking better opportunities, he would illegally cross into the U.S. in the 80s, and during his time in California, he adopted multiple aliases to avoid detection and become entangled in criminal activity. 1986 marked his first arrest when he was apprehended in San Francisco for possessing stolen property and carrying a loaded firearm. Throughout the late 80s, El Mencho would cross the border many times using false identities. During this period, authorities believed he was working in meth production and trafficking alongside his brother-in-law, Abigail Gonzalez Valencia. 2 years later, he's arrested again for drug trafficking and deported right back to Mexico. This was just the beginning because he came right back to the U.S. illegally and continued his criminal activities. In 1992, he's arrested during a heroin transaction and later sentenced to 5 years in prison. Now, he pled guilty to protect his brother from a life sentence, and after serving 3 years, he's deported back to Mexico again. Now, once back in Mexico, El Mencho served briefly as a police officer in Jalisco, but he soon transitions into organized crime, joining the Milenio cartel and strengthening ties by marrying Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, the sister of a cartel leader. He started off as a sicario and rose quickly. 2003, after the arrest of cartel leader Armando Valencia Cornelio and attacks from rival gangs, the Milenio cartel fractured. El Mencho moved to Guadalajara and partnered up with Sinaloa cartel's Ignacio Nacho Coronel to manage drug operations. Following the deaths and arrests of several cartel leaders between 2009 and 10, El Mencho vied for leadership. A split formed within the Milenio cartel, leading to a violent conflict between factions. El Mencho led one of these groups under the name Los Matazetas, which later evolved into the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJ&G. Now, his faction prevailed, and the CJ&G is now one of the most dominant forces in Mexico's drug trade. So as the head of the CJ&G, El Mencho would expand the cartel's territory, increasing its influence and creating powerful financial networks. His groups were found in places like Jalisco, Colima, and Guanajuato. They would focus heavily on methamphetamine and cocaine trafficking, both domestically and internationally. By 2015, the CJ&G had spread into the US, Latin America, Europe, Asia, Asia, and Africa. DEA had estimated the group's total assets to be nearly $50 billion, with El Mencho's personal net worth exceeding $500 million and possibly reaching over $1 billion. In 2015, El Mencho became one of Mexico's most dangerous and elusive figures. His leadership style would involve brutal attacks against his enemies and law enforcement. In 2012, authorities nearly captured him after a shootout in Jalisco, but he escaped. CJ&G responded by setting 37 vehicles on fire to block roads and hinder the pursuit, so he continued to evade authorities despite coordinated operations targeting him. And in March 2015, CJ&G ambushed federal police in Ocotlan, killing 5 officers and 3 civilians. Later that month, another shootout left 4 cartel members dead, which included a close associate. By April 6, 2015, CJ&G members killed 15 policemen in a coordinated attack, the deadliest attack against law enforcement in Mexico since 2010. In response, the government launches Operation Jalisco on May 1, 2015. During that operation, a Mexican army chopper was shot down with a rocket-propelled grenade, killing 9 soldiers. That day, CJ&G carries out attacks across 20 towns, torching vehicles, gas stations, and banks to delay government forces. Now, despite these aggressive attempts to capture him, El Mencho continued to evade capture. They said that he was hiding out in mountainous regions, anywhere in Jalisco, Michoacán, Colima, and Nayarit. These locations offer natural protection and escape routes for him, but intel suggests that he's surrounded by former military personnel and operates with 2 layers of security. He's also believed to live modestly to avoid drawing attention. Aside from all that, El Mencho takes insults a little personally. One such case would be that of YouTuber Juan Luis Lagunas Rosales, known as El Pirata de Culiacán, who was gunned down inside a bar in Jalisco on December 17, 2017. You see, days earlier, Rosales posted a viral video drunkenly insulting El Mencho, saying, Within a week, unknown gunmen fired over 15 bullets into his body. In fact, they tagged him so bad that they could only identify him through his tattoos afterward. No suspects were identified, and no group claimed responsibility. In February 2022, unconfirmed reports came out saying that El Mencho had died of respiratory arrest in a private hospital. However, in March 2023, DEA agent Kyle Morey publicly denied those rumors, and as of today, El Mencho remained the most wanted man in Mexico and one of the most sought out by the U.S. The U.S. government is currently offering a reward of $15 million for any information leading to his capture. The Mexican government throws its own 300 million pesos into it, which comes out to about 15 million. This man is wanted for drug trafficking, organized crime involvement, and illegal possession of firearms. His cartel is responsible for hundreds of acts of violence, including attacks on security forces, political assassinations, and widespread corruption. Internationally, CJ&G is a major supplier of methamphetamine and cocaine, contributing significantly to the drug crisis in the U.S. and many other countries. But despite numerous attempts, law enforcement has yet to apprehend him. His ability to avoid capture has only added to his reputation. While many of his associates have either been arrested or killed, El Mencho's out here remaining at large, protected by a vast criminal empire and a very loyal network. The search for Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes continues, as authorities on both sides of the border maintain one of the most intense and costly manhunts in modern history.